wife and I were pregnant, and we're very excited to have triplet boys. And at about 18 weeks, my wife went in for a regular routine visit and realized that her cervix had opened up. And so she was rushed to the hospital for an emergency cerclage to literally push the 3 boys back up and stitch up her cervix. And so she was on bed rest for probably about another 8 more weeks, and the boys were born. It was 3 boys were born, 25 weeks and 5 days. 1 pound 10, 1 pound 13, 1 pound 9 ounces, and so they were immediately rushed to the NICU. Brain bleeds, holes in hearts, on ventilators and all of that. And then after about a month after birth, the oldest and the youngest, Christopher and Kale, contracted necrotizing enterocolitis. That staph infection just ate away at their intestine, and so a month after birth, those 2 passed away. Kellen continued to fight, our middle son, Kellen, continued to fight in the NICU for about another 3 or 4 months, and finally came home and has gone through a number of different issues, but he's now a 17-year-old junior in high school, almost headed to college. And so we just experienced a lot. Didn't know a lot about March of Dimes until we realized after all of that, and we kind of made our way through all of the different support, research, funding, medications, the family support that we received was all being funded and developed by March of Dimes, and so that's why we got involved. The main support that we had while our children were in the NICU was from March of Dimes and Northside Hospital. And I know that March of Dimes helps fund those types of positions, and that was really a guiding light for us as we went through those challenges in the NICU, and there was just so much support. So that's the main reason. And then now that the March of Dimes has funded research for donor breast milk and its reduction of the potential of necrotizing enterocolitis and its overall impact, like I can't be more excited about that potential opportunity and to try and increase the funding in Medicaid for donor breast milk, because I think that really can make a difference, both of those things, in the lives of moms and babies, and hopefully no one ever has to go through what my wife and I went through.
Welcome. King & Spalding is thrilled to host you for this very special event for the March of Dimes. As a board member of the Atlanta Market March of Dimes and chair of this event, I'm excited to share with you the important and critical mission of the March of Dimes. The March of Dimes provides support, research, and education to ensure we have healthy moms and babies. Each year, 1 woman dies every 12 hours from pregnancy-related causes, and 1 in 10 babies is born preterm. With your contributions, we can support parents throughout their pregnancies and help to end preventable maternal health risks and death. We can end preterm birth and close the health equity gap for every family. Now, there are donation and action cards on your tables if you'd like to get involved with the mission, and we really hope that you do. Now, what we're talking about today, supporting working parents in the workplace, is directly in line with the March of Dimes mission. If there's anything the global pandemic showed us, it's that it's critical to recognize the unique challenges that working parents face and to provide support to working parents. In 2020, as a mother of 3, I was faced with practicing law as a partner in the trial group at King & Spalding in a virtual world, while raising an infant and supervising a kindergartner and teenager in virtual school. Luckily, I not only had support from my husband and my extended family, but I also had support from the firm during this challenging time. Now, while a lot of us have returned in person to the workforce, the challenges remain for working parents, and in particular, working moms. Now, we're fortunate to have a distinguished keynote speaker, a panel of individuals from top Atlanta companies, and all of you here today to discuss what corporate Atlanta can do and is doing to support working parents and why this is so important. And before we move into the program, I'd like to thank our sponsors. Thank you so much, Northside Hospital, Aaron's, Cox Enterprises, PwC, King & Spalding, Affinity Home Lending, and Wellstar Health System. Thank you for supporting March of Dimes and this event. And now I'd like to introduce Rose Horton. Rose is the Executive Director of the Women and Infant Division at Emory Decatur Hospital. In this role, her commitment has been rekindled with a heightened focus on equity, quality, and metrics as the hospital focused on maternal mortality. She's passionate about safe and equitable care for all women. Rose speaks on the topic of maternal mortality, diversity, equity, inclusion at a local, regional, and national level. She's leading a DEI health and wellness committee at her hospital. Rose served as the 2012 president of the Association of Women's Health, Obstetric, and Neonatal Nursing, which is a 25,000 nurse member association that's pivotal in creating, supporting, legislating, and researching best practices in evidence-based care of women and newborns. She served on the advisory board of the Obstetrics COVID Innovation Collaborative, and she serves on the executive board of Sonova Associates. She was recognized by March of Dimes with the 2021 Heroes in Action Award and by the AJC with the Nursing Excellence Award in 2022. And Rose was recently tapped for the National Black Maternal Task Force for the Biden administration. Rose.
Hello, everyone. You're all as excited as I am to be with people in person. This is like so exciting. So happy to be here. The mission of March of Dimes resonates with me so very much, and I'm delighted at the opportunity to be able to speak just for a few minutes. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. Okay. You know, I'm so used to having something in front of me, so I'll try not to look. But I really love this quote by Maya Angelou, because it really speaks to the power of not just mothering, but parenting. What she says is that parents stand in the gap between the known and the unknown. The unknown for us is when you're pregnant, you know, will I have a safe and a healthy delivery? When your child is born is, how will my child grow up? Will my child go to the school that I want them to go to? Will they thrive? Will they excel? Will they be free from bullying and violence? That's all the unknown. But what we know is that we could provide consistency, we can nurture, we can provide love. That's the known, but we stand in the gap between the two of them. I know that many of you saw this announcement recently. So Serena Williams said that she is retiring. She's like, I don't like the word retirement. I want you to know that I'm evolving from tennis, moving forward, because she wants to focus on her family, expanding her family, and also focus on her business. And one of the many articles I read about her announcement, she said, if I was a dude, I wouldn't even be having this conversation. I'm like, I know that's right. But be that as it may, she is having this conversation, and she has the resources to be able to say, now I need to switch my focus from what I've done for so many years in love to do something else. As a sidebar, in case you didn't know, she started Serena Ventures about 5 years ago, and she talked about going to a presentation to hear more about how to become an angel investor. And she heard someone say that less than 2% of women-owned businesses are funded by investors. And she went to speak to the presenter afterwards. She's like, I thought you said 2%, but you probably didn't say that. She's like, yes, I did say that, less than 2%. And she made the decision at that time. She's like, you know what? I realized that people who look like me need to write bigger checks. So March of Dimes, we need to connect with Serena Williams so she can write a bigger check for us as well. And I love that. And she was also focusing not only on women-owned companies, what she's focusing on, there's 20 startups that they're supporting, but also the marginalized and the underrepresented that usually don't get the investment dollars. She had the luxury of making a choice and saying, okay, I'm going to step away from this because I have resources. But for the most part, many of us do not have that luxury, right? The United States is the only country that doesn't have paid leave. I'm so thankful for the many organizations that do provide it, because let me tell you, especially after having a baby, We've coined a term called the fourth trimester, the 12 weeks after the baby. It's a very vulnerable time for parenting, very vulnerable. And most of the morbidity and mortality happens in that fourth trimester. And we as a nation, we definitely have an opportunity to do better and to provide leave. I'm thankful that I work in an organization that does provide a lot of great benefits that I'll allude to closer to the end. I love that I had an opportunity to come after Emily, after her sharing her own story. I don't know, do you remember the fall of 2020? I remember the fall of 20, you guys are laughing like, what? I remember the fall of 2020 really well because I felt incredibly optimistic. I was like, what? We didn't have one, but we had 3 vaccines with proven efficacy. I'm like, we're gonna eradicate coronavirus. It's been a terrible 8 months, but it's gonna be over. That's why I love this meme, because I really thought that 2020 was as bad as it got. In actuality, it continued, right? What 2020 revealed to us was our vulnerability as a nation. And our vulnerability was that we were incredibly polarized. We were incredibly divided. And there was a fair amount of misinformation. And as a result, 71 million people opted not to get the vaccine. 71 million. We were the lowest vaccine compliant nation of most nations. So it's important for us to consider the impact that that has had. In 2021, I was rounding in my NICU, the neonatal intensive care unit, as Corey talked about his experience. I was rounding in the NICU and chatting with one of my nurses, Michelle. Michelle works primarily the weekend, so I don't see her often. And so I saw her on that Monday and we were chatting. I'm like, how are things, 2021? She's like, things suck. I'm like, fair. Tell me more. She's like, schools are closed. I'm responsible for the kids. I have to be the teacher. I have to hold them accountable to make sure that they jump online, hold them accountable to do their homework. I'm the lunch lady. I've never liked the lunch lady, and now I'm the lunch lady. She went on and on. She's like, and my safe place for a lot of working people, but especially working women. Sometimes work is the safe place that you can get away from your other place. She's like, my safe place isn't safe because this pandemic is really terrible. So we know that the pandemic had a significant impact, and might I say disproportionately higher for the working moms. And I love the way that Moyer captured it. And I'm going to have to turn around to read this. She said, for me, what's especially hard is that though it was getting better, that the worst, I thought it was getting better, that the worst was over. Yes, there would be more variants, but our vaccine would protect us. My family could finally exhale. But you know the scene in every horror movie where the main character shoots the bad guy, cries in relief, it's all over and walks away, and you yell, no, damn it. You have to check and make sure he's dead. Well, we were that tragic hero, and the coronavirus got right back up. It got up and it stabbed us in the heart. Yeah, it stabbed us in the heart. And in healthcare, we were ravaged. We were decimated. We are still trying to right the ship. And it's not just healthcare. I've read, and I have so many colleagues that are teachers. The teachers were like, I'm out of here. Everyone is over it and transitioning. March of Dimes, along with several others who are working in this space, was super excited to get this report from the CDC because we were interested about what happened. And again, Emily spoke to it and Corey spoke to it. I love that the mission of March of Dimes has expanded since 2016 because primarily it used to be a focus on prematurity. And now there's a broader focus on equity and maternal outcomes. So with bated breath, I said, what is the CDC going to say? What are our outcomes going to look like? So of course, I expected that our outcomes would have a higher number of morbidity and mortality, right? Millions of people died during this global pandemic. So of course, our outcomes was going to be different. But another vulnerability that was exposed by the pandemic was the significant systemic, structural, and individualized inequities and racism. So I'm super excited because, again, I'm in person and I have a pointer. So this is me pointing. Here I am. So I want you to look at the graph that's on the left, okay? And I love this graph because for the most part, when we see reports and we see data, it's aggregated data. And this graph really shows you the importance of having disaggregated or stratified data. So if you look to the left, that's overall. And when you see a 1 on top of the number, that means it's statistically significant. So we're looking at 2018, 2019, 2020, and morbidity and mortality, primarily mortality for this one. So as you look at the total, we went from 17 to 20.1. That's not such a big deal. I mean, it's statistically significant, not such a big deal. And then to 23.8, that's not so great. But when you look at it for our non-Hispanic white patients, and then you look at it for our Black patients, you know, data is really clear. You can't argue with it. What you will see is a disproportionately higher rate of death for birthing people who look like me than for anyone else. So it's really, really important as we consider the mission of the March of Dimes, how we can contribute to really eradicating inequities and making it safe for all people within the birthing space. I should not have to do research on morbidity and mortality by state before deciding where I want to live and start my family. But unfortunately, the reality is there's some states that are doing better than others. I've been here for 6 years, in Atlanta, Georgia for 6 years. And I'm telling you, every time March of Dimes comes out with a report that says that we're D- and F, it makes me so incredibly angry because that's not me. I'm like, that's not me. And then I have to say, it's not about you, Rose, it's about the state of Georgia. But I personalize it, right? Because I live in Georgia and it matters to me. And I don't want to be in a state that has a D-. I don't think anybody wants that. We want to do better. And there's opportunities for us to do better. So Mahmoud Falah said this in 2006, and I think it's still relevant. Let me tell you, I have data back from the 1930s that talks about maternal morbidity and mortality. Morbidity and mortality has been increasing for decades. And in my data from the 1930s, it says that 60% of mortality is preventable. 1930s. Here we are in 2022. The CDC says 60 to 65% of morbidity and mortality is preventable. And as we are living in a post-Roe era, I assure you that morbidity and mortality will continue to increase. So it begs the question, why? And I think this encapsulates it really well. And again, it is within our power to change that. So what are we doing at Emory Decatur Hospital to really support nurses and parents? Several things. One thing that I'm going to share with you really quick that didn't make the list because I thought about it as I was driving in today. I'm like, darn it, I forgot to put that down. One of my colleagues came to me. If you're from Atlanta, you know that our hospital used to be DeKalb Medical. Who remembers DeKalb Medical? Somebody had her baby at DeKalb Medical. Anna, thank you so much for supporting us. So we used to be DeKalb Medical, and we became part of the Emory healthcare system right around late 2018, 2019. So one of my colleagues came to me, I think it was the end of 2019, early 2020, with tears in her eyes. And she's like, oh my gosh, Rose, do you know what? I'm like, what? She's like, now that we're part of Emory, Do you know that Emory will pay 100% for infertility? Tears in her eyes. That is life changing, right? She has one child at home and thought, that's it, because, my life savings is gone now. That's huge. That's a huge benefit that really impacts. What else have we done? And you're probably saying diversity, equity, and inclusion. Why does that matter as it relates to parenting? It's really important because we spend most of our time at work to create an area, to create a sense of belonging for all people, where all people can thrive and can be their best, which is what the Office of Diversity is going to do. We just started this recently. We have an Office of Wellbeing that we just kicked off, and I'm so happy to have my good friend that I'm going to point to right now, Tim, who is one of the co-chiefs of the Office of Wellbeing. Our intention is to create an organization where well-being is woven in the fabric of everything that we do. It's not an afterthought. It's in everything that we do, and I'm super excited that that's been one of our focus. And something that's maybe a little bit granular is we have a milk depot. So if we have mamas who are very blessed and have lots of milk supply and they want to donate it, we're a depot. So you can donate to us. We've partnered with the Austin Milk Bank, and we send the milk to the Austin Milk Bank, and they use the milk and they send it off to neonatal intensive care units, talking about donor milk and shelf-stable milk. We play a huge role in that, so I love it. And also, even more granular, we think it's really important for women and birthing people to have access to spaces for pumping, for breastfeeding, not just the bathroom, because we have lots of research that says it should never happen in the bathroom. So we have safe spaces for that to happen. I mean, right? Who agrees? I absolutely agree with Ray Romano. And as I end, we know that leave makes a huge, huge difference. I'm running out of time. I'm not going to talk more about that. And I just end with this. Parenting is hard. But it's also the best privilege that we have. I am so, so blessed to have two amazing daughters. One of them is a nurse and one is a social media marketer. And 6 months ago, my sweet daughter and her husband blessed me with a grandbaby, and I can't think of anything greater than that. So it's a huge blessing. And this is me. Thank you so much. I think I'm right on time. Thanks, everyone.
I am very passionate about maternal and child health. I am a legal epidemiologist. I'm a health equity champion. I'm a wife. I'm a mom to a little girl who will be 1 in 9 days. She was born at 33 weeks and 5 days, which of course required her to complete a NICU stay. I had to be readmitted into the hospital a few days after being discharged. As a result, we had to rely on human donor milk for her to get the nutrients that she needed as a preemie. So I completely understand how urgent it is for moms and babies to have access to human donor milk. I had to seek medical attention further along into my postpartum period as a result, so I completely understand the need for medical attention and that coverage. So for me, it is very urgent that I participate in this type of advocacy. One of the main reasons that I entered into this competition and why I'm so excited is I wanted to have this type of platform and leverage this type of platform to bring awareness to the maternal mortality numbers, especially here within the state of Georgia. I wanted to bring awareness, but in addition, I wanted to highlight resources to moms to support people. And I wanted to help implement increased change, right? So stimulate further conversations, help inform next steps, help leverage additional stakeholders. But overall, just wanted to continue to highlight, and continue to stimulate additional change.
And now I'd like to introduce Terry Bunton Guthrie, who works in business development at Smith & Howard CPAs. Terry is a longtime March of Dimes volunteer, a past board member, a mother of 5, a leader in the community, and she's also former Mrs. Georgia.
All right. Thank you. Thank you so much for all you've talked about today. Just very briefly, the reason I'm here is because I asked Shelley what she does for a living. Back in the corner there, Shelley Owens works with the March of Dimes, and I had been a volunteer for the March of Dimes for decades. And the whole Mrs. Georgia was because that was my platform. It was folic acid awareness. Many of you women may have known. You all took folic acid when you were pregnant, hopefully before you were pregnant. And I didn't find out about it until after I'd already had my children. And I thought, how can someone, I mean, I'm educated, I know things. Why did I not know anything about it? Why did my doctor not tell me anything about it? So that's sort of how I got passionate about understanding all the things that can happen and the medical breakthroughs that have taken place and continue to take place. So I am just here to moderate this panel. This is an amazing group of folks, and I am so impressed by them. So I'm going to give you a little bit about each one of them. Whitney Woodard is the Senior Vice President and Chief People Officer at Aaron's, a leader in lease-to-own furniture, appliances, and electronics. Whitney is also married with 2 children, a daughter who just began her first year of high school, and a son who she will spend this afternoon moving into a dorm room for his first semester in college. Good luck with that. Kyle Rice is the market director for Aflac in Georgia. His primary responsibility is growing sales and distribution across the home state of Aflac. Kyle and his team support insurance professionals to provide necessary solutions for families and employers who have experienced financial strain after becoming injured or sick. His vision is to make a bigger impact on every community across the state by increasing the awareness around solutions with Aflac that will help mitigate financial burden for all families. Kyle stays very busy as a father of 2 with a preschooler and a 5th grader, and he's joined today by his wife, Mary. Next, we have Kelly Elliott. Kelly is the Vice President of Total Rewards for Delta Airlines. Included in this responsibility for the company's family care programs. That includes caregiving, maternity and paternal leave, and other family-related support. Kelly and her team are currently exploring ways to expand the support they provide to all Delta families, given the challenges of a post-COVID world, which I'm not sure we are really post-COVID. But Kelly understands firsthand the challenges that dual-income families face. She has active twin boys in the 7th grade and a husband who also works at Delta. Juggling work and life responsibilities is something she does on a daily basis. And finally, Sarah Simmons. She's a talent business advisor and leads the Women and Allies Southeast community for Deloitte, who actually recently returned from family leave and has an 8-month-old George and is also the mom of a 3-year-old Lily. Okay, so prior to actually asking Whitney my first question, I want to get started. I want to go back. I know we've kind of all been thinking about it. March of 2020, the month the world shut down. Working parents suddenly found themselves thrust in a virtual work environment while they homeschooled and cared for small children, shared a physical workspace with their spouses, their kids, and their animals. I don't know about you guys, but all of a sudden, it's become common knowledge when the doorbell rings, your dogs start barking, and everybody's like, oh, it's okay. But you remember when it first started, everybody was like, oh, the dog's barking, kids are crying, oh no. So not only were they dealing with all those struggles, mental health breakdowns, bandwidth shortages, every working parent suddenly found themselves in a very uncharted territory. So Whitney, today you're the Chief People Officer for Aaron's, a Fortune 100 company, and you've worked in human resources for your entire career. Probably thought you'd seen it all. Did the pandemic cause you to start seeing the challenges of working parenthood in a new light?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think every working parent in this room would say that. I can so vividly remember kind of COVID showed up with a vengeance. Like it came out of nowhere. It went from 0 to 60 in no time. And I vividly remember standing in a conference room, kind of mapping out, what meetings to cancel, what events to move, and how we're going to get through this thing, and mapping out kind of worst case scenarios, which at the time we said things like, what if this thing goes on for 6 weeks? Like I look back now and think like, little did we know, joke's on you, 24 months and still going. So, for companies like Aaron's, working parents were at the forefront of our minds and the challenges, right? Because you had a mixture. You had, team members who were corporate headquarters team members who could work remotely, but were dealing with all those challenges that you just talked about. They had children at home and they needed to be the parent and, supervision and the teacher and all the things that needed to happen there. And then you also had team members for companies like Aaron's and other retailers that were deemed essential who could not work remotely. And those individuals, had the same childcare issues and challenges. And as workers for businesses, we were all also trying to figure out how to over-index for our businesses because we needed our companies to be successful and relevant when this pandemic was over with. So there are a whole host of challenges from a working parent perspective. But what I would say as I look back on it now, I think what I am so proud of is to say that, working parents and companies really over-indexed in kind of two areas, adaptability and grace. And we all did that very, very quickly. You had organizations that had, people would dabble in remote work, but never did you have the entire organization walk out the door one day and not come back for months and years. And so that was new. You talked about, this adapting of parents, working parents. In the very beginning of the pandemic, you had kids joining Zoom meetings, you had dogs incessantly barking, you had messy homes because people didn't know how to use a virtual Zoom background, and all of those things were happening. And you saw both, team members, employees, and companies quickly adapt to say, that's the new norm, we've got to lean into that. But one of the coolest things I think we saw too were for team members and employees who couldn't work remotely, working parents did at that time what they do best, which is figure it out. So we saw, employees, Aaron saw this, the company I was with at the time saw this as well. You had parents who had those same childcare issues who were, working with their coworkers and saying, hey, if you'll kind of do the school thing with the kids while I go in and work, I'll swap with you later in the day. And this sense of community is what really got kind of working parents through that. So, that adaptability and grace, I think companies came kind of much closer in leaning in and meeting their employees where they were. And, as I look back now, I hate that a pandemic took us there, but I'm really proud of how we all came through it.
All right, thank you. Well, I think another way of saying that is that this pandemic brought to light a lot of things that we were already dealing with. So one of them that was definitely revealed was just the whole struggle with work-life balance, and that parents needed more flexibility. So earlier this summer, Tesla CEO Elon Musk drew criticism for his mandatory return to office policy, requiring his entire workforce to be in the office for a minimum of 40 hours per week or to depart from Tesla. So Kyle, next question's for you. So you're a busy sales executive with an active young family. You've likely learned, along with the rest of us, that a flexible work schedule with the ability to work from home at least sometimes does so much to ease the burden on stressed out and working parents. What do you see as a fair and flexible return to work policy, and what is Aflac doing about it?
Yeah. So first of all, it had to be mandatory to come in, so we had to teach everybody how to turn the cameras, so they could learn how to get their face and a light on there. No, we didn't have any mandatory events. So one of the things about Aflac I think that is really, really important is I think everyone understands that COVID has really, creativity has come to the forefront, I think, in the world, right? So the traditional 8 to 5 isn't something that really, in my mind, exists. I think so many people are creative. I think you mentioned best, working parents figure it out. Well, great companies understand that great people find ways to get things done. So when I think about our organization, do we have a hard and fast rule? No, it's a hybrid schedule. It's a flex schedule. In my organization, I firmly believe we've got to meet people where they are, right? So I'm a good example. I've got a fifth grader and I've got a pre-K 4. Youngest one runs the house, obviously, so her schedule is very inconsistent in what she chooses to do that day. But I say that, and I'll joke that we have to figure this out, and it's not going to change. It'll continue to change. And so a couple of things that I think from a leadership perspective is really important is meeting people where they are. So a couple of things in our office that we do is we're very intentional about the meetings. And, we don't want to have meetings to have meetings. They need to be high value. And we also understand that before 9 and after 3, the world gets a little crazy for most working families. And so in order for us to be most effective in the time that we have, and what I've learned in the last few years, and I think it's more true now than ever before, is people are very creative. They're so talented. Everyone in this room is very talented, and it can be done in a short period of time. It doesn't have to be a traditional 8 to 5. So a very successful person and our organization can do it in a very unconventional way. And I think my job as a leader is to really empower the creativity to get people to understand that it doesn't have to always be done the way that it's always been done. And so for me, I think it's an entrepreneur's dream to be in the world that we're in right now, because whether you're starting your own business or employed through someone like Aflac, you have the ability to be creative and to really make a huge impact on whatever it is that you choose to do. And it doesn't have to be the way that it always was. And so for me, I think the hybrid schedule, being very intentional, and then the last part, I think, as an executive, I think that a lot of people are starting to understand that is different, is being very clear about expectations and accountability. So there is a fair checks and balances that I think more often than not in a virtual world, I think that is becoming a bigger concern. So I think it's very important to clearly communicate and articulate the creativity that one does and has, but still understanding that, hey, there are checks and balances. It might be remote. It might be the Amazon guy that never shows up like at our house and just box after box after box. But hey, we've got to get things done. And so I think as a leader, it's so important for anyone enrolled to clearly articulate, embrace the creativity, understand that it can be different, but then be very clear and consistent in our messaging on a day in and day out basis, because I think we've all had enough change. It'll continue to change, but what you don't want is whiplash in everyday life. And so any sort of consistency that I can provide to our team and empowering that creativity, I think provides a great work-life balance and a great hybrid work schedule for anyone. So.
Thank you. Well, I know one of the other challenges is varying between your essential workers and those that have the more flexibility. So Kelly, you're with Delta Airlines. Perhaps no industry has faced greater challenges this summer as you've sought to overcome the Great Resignation. Your workforce is heavily comprised of the essential workers. What are the ways that Delta Airlines has met these unique challenges and supported working parents?
Thanks, and great to be with everybody here today. We have to kind of take a few steps back to even answer that question, because it's been quite the journey over the last 24 months for us as an organization. We went from the high of highs in early 2020 down to 5% of our revenue, pretty much throughout 2020 and into 2021. And the way that we managed through that at that time was really through massive amounts of change with our employee base, but all voluntary. So we had two major actions that we took. And one, I think, really enabled our working families to manage through this time. So one was we asked people, if you want to retire and you want to leave, and this is the time, we're going to help you through that change. And the other was we asked people to take voluntary leaves of absence, because unpaid voluntary leaves of absence. This is how we came together as an organization to really survive this moment. And it was really about survival and sacrifice. And it was this joint, our philosophy as an organization. So I'm in the HR space, compensation benefits is what I do. And our philosophy has always been shared success. During this time, it was really shared sacrifice. And it felt that, and I think we all felt it in some way. But I think what that did for a lot of our working families, corporate or frontline, was it gave them a moment to step back if that's what they needed, and with no repercussion. So we had people, and those leaves of absence continued through October of 2021. So that helped the business and also helped a lot of people. Maybe they just wanted to take time for themselves. Maybe they wanted to take time for their families, but they were able to step back. So I was in this position too with two rising fifth graders at the time. One was in a special school, so his school was restarting. The other was not. And so my husband actually took a leave of absence because we didn't know what in the world we were going to do with him as he was trying to start virtual school. He took a whole month off to really just focus in on getting Ben going on the right foot. Didn't go real well, but he tried really, really hard. And so that opportunity, while I think that was hard and it was a sacrifice because there was a pay element to it, it gave people that ability to step back and really come right back into the workforce whenever they were ready. So that's what we did kind of in the midst of the real heavy pandemic time. But now, as you all know, business is back. We're trying to handle all the business. We've now had 25% of our workforce leave us voluntarily during that time. And now we're hiring back like crazy and really need people at work. So we need to support people in how can they manage care during that time? How can they make sure they get the support that they need to come to work and be productive at work? And frankly, a lot of them wanted to be at work after that amount of time at home, whether they were a flight attendant or a gate agent or an IT employee. People were ready. So in 2020, our focus was all around well-being. I love this focus, Rose, that you spoke about today on well-being. My team manages a large portion of our well-being programs at Delta, and we have, the key pillars that you would always expect, physical and mental health, but also we've now introduced family care as an aspect of that, as well as financial well-being. And so as we stood up that family care pillar of our well-being programs, we focused on, backup daycare. We've heavily subsidized backup care days for our employees. It was just like dipping our toe in the water. And now we're expanding that, looking at daycare partnerships and subsidized daycare, looking at expanding leave for maternity and paternity. That's not something we've done, have a significant amount of at Delta, but we are going further with it. And really just thinking about that entire life cycle of a parent from the time you're trying to get pregnant to the time you're going through the pregnancy. It's very different for a flight attendant and a pilot versus somebody who maybe works at a call center. And so we have to think about all those aspects. And so we hope that this is really driving a significant amount of change for our organization. Change that, like you said, Kyle, we haven't been willing to talk about in the past because it's been such a traditional organization. But now we've been able to move the needle on what's been acceptable and what will be acceptable next year. So really excited about continuing to kind of learn from this, let this highlight where we weren't maybe doing the best by our families and how we can now really improve.
Okay, Sarah. So you have a unique perspective, having just returned from maternity leave. And as a talent business advisor with Deloitte, I'd really like to hear a little bit about some of the challenges that you might see that are specific to a woman. I do want to bring up, it's said, and this is really kind of scary, that the average office worker wastes 2 hours and 39 minutes. I don't know how they got exactly 39 minutes a week in ineffective meetings. Okay, I'm going to make sure I get that out right. And the cost of that is about $400 billion annually. So it's reported that employees now have about 250% more meetings every day than they did before the pandemic. So how is the structure of those meetings challenging to moms?
Yeah. Well, I think everyone's face when we heard that number was like, that's a low number. Like, exactly right. I think when we look at our calendars, we have to really think what's important to us and what does your calendar reflect. And we just had a study come out from our chief well-being officer at Deloitte that said your calendar should reflect your values. And so I mentioned that I just came back from maternity leave in July. Last time when I came back from maternity leave, we then had a pandemic. So I was back for 6 weeks and then my daughter was home. And that made me learn how to block my calendar and what it should look like. So who in this room has this on their calendar today? Do you have 2 hours blocked for this? Does everyone have something on the calendar? Who has playing with your child on your calendar today? I do. I have 2 hours in the morning for her and 2 hours in the afternoon, and she loves meetings. So sometimes it's like we're in a meeting with mommy, and sometimes it's a dance party. But that's what's important to me. And so I have to look at my calendar and say, what are my values? One thing that's not on there right now is working out, and that is what I need to get back. But, I think when we are looking at our day, when Deloitte is telling you to look at your life, it's not just maternity leave, paternity leave, it's every aspect of your life. And so my role at Deloitte is to advise all of our audit professionals, and I have an amazing privilege of talking to people when they're starting their career. So they're 23 and their values are very different from someone whose value just comes back from maternity leave. And so I really value that time with them to talk to them. What do you want to do when you're 23, 24? And then to talk to somebody this week who was coming back from maternity leave. And I said, what do you need from us? And she was like, I don't know. I don't know what I need. And I said, that's okay. Block your calendar for today and think about it. And so look at your calendar and say, what should my day look like? Not what does someone else want my day to look like, is really where we've tried to go during the pandemic. Deloitte provides the resources for us to do that through our well-being. We heard, I think a lot of what we align with is with Delta is we have well-being that covers all different areas. So that backup daycare is really important. 2 people on my call yesterday were like, we obviously don't have daycare today because you see my child running around in the back. And sometimes it's okay to turn off that Zoom background and show like what your real life looks like. It's messy, it's okay. My husband always goes to like a quiet room in the house and I'm like, everyone knows we have a dog now, it's okay. I can't have conference calls at 9 a.m. because that's when everyone else in our neighborhood walks their dog and he just barks the whole time. And so that's like my little block in the morning to say, okay, I'm gonna get my day in order and know what my day is gonna look like before I just jump right in. That being said, I did have a meeting, on the way here and had to deal with that in the car and in this parking deck, which was a little bit scary. But
that was a challenge, but all of itself.
Yeah, you try to just make sure that your values are reflected in your day and that you're communicating that. So I liked what Kyle said, just like making sure you're leading and that you're communicating it and that everyone's encouraged to communicate. So it's not just about, what do you need today? It's what do you need long term, and making sure those resources are known. A lot of people at your companies might not know that you offer things that could help them, whether it's a Zoom background that might help them with something or a family leave. Your family leave at Deloitte isn't just for having a baby, it's for if your parents are sick, if your spouse is sick, if you need more time, you can take that leave every year. And that's something that I've really valued just with all the challenges that have come up, whether it's my children or my father-in-law getting sick. There's just a lot of things that happen in life, and it's nice to know that I have a company that can support that, but communicating that out to our people too. And so a lot of what my job has just been telling people and telling moms, and we're able to support our moms through our working groups and just sharing with them, it's okay to talk. It's okay to say, hey, I'm not gonna be in this meeting today because I have a doctor's appointment. And I remember there were many times in the pandemic, I'd get on that call during the doctor's appointment and be like, I have to be on. Like, you don't have to be on, it's okay. And so just making sure everyone knows the values you have and communicating those out, that it's okay for them to have those values as well.
I think that's excellent advice. So Kyle, as our lone male on the panel, are there specific challenges to you as a dad that we want to share?
Well, I'm just thankful I haven't got kicked off this panel yet. This is so,
it's not too late.
Well, we got time. But it goes back to a lot of what I talked about earlier. But I do firmly believe in my heart that whether you're a working mom or a working dad, everyone has value in their role, and it can be so different. And what is used to be different is now normal, right? And so I think. And I talked about communication earlier, but being very clear and communicating not only, and I know we're talking about working moms and dads, but this is also personally and at home, professionally, and I think people understand today that, and we joked about like the calls in the past, like 3 years ago, if you were on a call and you didn't log in and you almost had to lie and be like, well, I got a doctor's appointment, or, everyone kind of skated around, and it created this environment where people were afraid, I believe, people were afraid to say, hey, my kid's sick today, or I have a dentist appointment, and this is the only time they could get me in. And I just think that fostered an environment where people didn't feel comfortable. And so for me, again, I think in a leadership role, I want to provide an environment where people feel safe and they feel comfortable and they understand that it can be done different. And so I face all the same challenges, but I think the thing that is so important to me is establishing at home, what is important, what are we going to do, and when are the times that we can do it, so whether it's working out or getting exercise or time with the kids or whatever, but that is built in to our day, and I'm very open with my team about what I'm doing. And I may or may not be available, but they know and they respect that. And that's reciprocal. So I understand that people start to feel comfortable, and the people that I get to lead and support with Aflac, as I look around the room, and I don't know everyone's employers, but our sales folks at Aflac are the people that come to everyone in this room that are employed through businesses in Atlanta and educate you, whether it's face-to-face or over the phone. So I just think it's so important to me in my role that I have to lead from the front and lead and be an example of what I think good looks like in today's world. And I think that goes down market. And so the people in our organization, I hope, continue to make a big influence in their communities. When I think about Emory and I think about Children's Healthcare of Atlanta and some of the major, employers across the great state of Georgia, those are Aflac clients, and those are family to us and family to me, because our people get to make an impact with the employees, and they have families and they can do that. So it's kind of a long, drawn-out answer, but it's got to start with the people that have influence and fostering an environment that we're all going to have things come up. We're all going to have things change, and I think as we do that, life becomes easier. I think there's a trust that's built. People feel comfortable, and people want to be a part of something that's bigger than themselves. And I think by doing that, it makes a big difference. So I think that's what we're going to do.
Yeah.
And we're doing.
Yes.
Can I add a point on
Absolutely.
that too? I mean, I think one of the things we've been really focused around the men and the women and everybody in our workforce is, Delta has been a traditional organization, and some of this is cultural change. And if we don't have our men and our fathers and all of our parents, regardless of what type of family it is, taking this time, there's a stigma associated with it, right? And I think for an organization like us, we're really trying to break that stigma and have all of our parents take this time and take care of their families so that our women can continue to move on in the organization too, because we found that when they have taken that time back, maybe the opportunities aren't coming as quickly. And so it's really a part of our DE&I goals as well, is how do we equally support all of our families, regardless of what type of family, how you become a family, and creating more equity from that lens.
And I will say that I look at sort of the transition over the last maybe 5 years. I mean, it's really happened prior to COVID, but you've really seen it stand out. And that is that we're looking at rights of parents, not just mothers, not just fathers. Fathers have the same amount of opportunity to stay at home, to have leave. So I know it's moving in the right direction, but I know there's probably still some organizations that haven't really embraced that to the same level. So let's see. I want to shift the conversation just a little bit. We've been talking about the needs of working parents. Now let's spend a little time talking about why. So Whitney, from a corporate perspective, why is it even important? I know that probably just seems so, why am I even asking that question? But I really want to hear on a corporate level, why is it important that we're supporting the working parents?
Sure. I mean, I think, the feel-good answer would be to say something like, well, it's the right thing to do for people. But every person in this room knows that will not win the day and can't win the day in a for-profit organization. And so I think when you start to think about kind of why do you do it beyond what feels good in your heart, it really comes down to you got to start with the facts. And so when you look at the U.S. workforce, 40% of the U.S. workforce is a working parent, right? So Kelly mentioned earlier, like Delta is hiring like crazy. Welcome to every organization in the United States right now. We have a talent deficit. And so you take out 40% of the U.S. workforce, that problem just got a whole lot worse. And so I think you start there, which are the basic facts of you need working parents in the workforce. And then additionally, some of our organizations skew much heavier on working parents than even that 40%. And then you have a lot of, employees that work for your organization that perhaps may be working parents in the future and aren't today, and they are watching exactly what you're doing as an organization to say, is this the company that I want to hitch my wagon to and stay with over the long term because of how they're going to support working parents. And so I think, retention of your team members, we talk about this all the time, it's a math equation. So you're not going to find the cost of turnover on the P&L, but it's very real. And so I think the first thing you have to do is really align leaders to say, look, we've got to really invest in retaining our team members, because if not, there's a large cost to the business. That's through the cost of recruiting, onboarding, training, the loss of productivity when you have a new person joining a new organization in a new role. And those costs they are, when you start to look at it and add them up, they are mind-blowing. So you can start from the kind of lowest level hourly team member that's doing a very kind of simple to train job. That's going to be at least $2,000, right, as a cost of turnover, all the way to somewhere between 50 to 150% of somebody's first year base compensation. So the math is there. So I think the first thing to do is really align leaders of, if we don't do this, here are the results of the company. And then beyond that, it really is about kind of what's your employee value proposition to the market, right? So I'm a firm believer that your current employees are your best or can be your worst recruitment marketing tool. And so your working parents are going to share the great things that are happening in your organization. They're going to share why employees should come and work and people should come and work at your organization, a place where they're going to be supported, where they have a sense of belonging, where there's going to be growth investment. And so we all know great people, and I would much prefer that we are having that our current employees really helping us and being force multipliers for our recruitment kind of efforts. So I think for all those reasons, it's difficult to argue that you shouldn't be doing it.
All right. I want to back up for just a second. Kelly, since you work in total rewards with Delta Airlines, just for some of these organizations that may not have this same level of support, what advice would you give to the folks in the room to advocate for more supportive work environment for their working parents?
Well, I mean, I think what Whitney said is really hits the nail on the head, that this is really about delivering what we need to deliver to our customers. And if we don't provide this support, then we're not going to have the workforce that we need. I mean, that's just the fact of the matter. We've got to get people the support they need, whatever that may look like. If that looks like coming to work and having the right lactation rooms, maybe that's one level of support. That may look like having additional caregiving support. It may just look like a flexible schedule, which is easier said than done sometimes, depending on what the role is. And I think you have to be willing to let people move within the organization too, and be flexible from that regard, because not every job is going to work. And I think we have to realize not every job is going to work. It's not a reality for a flight attendant or a pilot to be away from their family when they have a new child, but there may be other opportunities at the organization. We'd much rather keep that employee who's dedicated and loves Delta at Delta doing something else, even if it's for a temporary period of time. So finding those, being willing to take those opportunities and spread them across the organization, I think is really important. And being open and honest about those realities that we face. Because I think often enough, I think we try to force things and it just doesn't work. So if we can be open and honest about what another opportunity, another pathway. And we definitely don't have that perfect. It's something that we're really trying to capitalize on the talent that we have currently at Delta, because it's so hard to bring people in, right? So really trying to make sure we fit people with, the right realities of what they're facing at home, or the right skill sets with the right opportunity that exists, and building it into the talent kind of strategy throughout the organization.
Thank you. Sarah, you're very active with Deloitte's Women's and Parenting ERGs. What role and explain what those are too, and what role have they played in the support and connectivity of Atlanta's working parents? How important are these groups?
Yeah, so at Deloitte, we have a group of communities now. So I think the biggest thing is going back to the beginning of the pandemic, we had BRGs. So everyone knows everyone knows, but everyone has kind of heard in the past of a business resource group. And so you're like, okay, we have a BRG, we have an employee resource group, an ERG, and we had just kind of our traditional model. We were lucky enough to have one of the oldest women's initiatives in the country, and we had just a great setup from the early 90s. Well, that looks a lot different now and a lot different at the beginning of the pandemic, and what that support needs to be for women, and then specifically for working moms that are the women in our organization. So we made a shift, and we were listening to everyone. We said, okay, things are changing. Let's change and just get rid of all these different groups. We're going to do an inclusion council, and it's all going to sit over one. And 6 months into that, everyone was like, what's going on? What are we supposed to do? Like, I don't align with necessarily like our Hispanic network. And so how am I going to support them? And we shifted back, and we decided now it's not just going to be called a network, it's going to be called a community. And so, we heard Delta bring up the idea of community, and we're all about the Atlanta community. We're all about the New York community. We're all about the communities we live in. And so we made our communities at work reflect those. So our women and allies community, our Black allies community, it's no longer just a women's network. It's our allies. We have to bring our men into it. We have to bring everyone that's going to be sitting in that room with you when you're like, hey, gotta step out to pump real quick. Like, I need a break. And so it's not just, the 20 women that you see in your women's network meeting. So I've been really proud of the way we've shifted, and we've tried to think of it as more of a safe place for everyone, and not just a safe place for the people that it's directly impacting. And so we've had some really great mentor programs through that where, I'll have a male mentor. And the first time I saw that on my list, I was like, well, he's not a woman. Like, why would that come through the Women and Allies community? And it was a great relationship and showed me, what he can do to help me in my path at Deloitte and really make those pivots that you need. And honestly, coming in today, I thought we'd hear the word pivot a lot more. I think that's like a key word of 2020, and maybe everyone's scared of it now. But I think what we did over the last few years with the communities is really pivot. And that's what I would say companies need to do is don't go into it like, hey, these are the 10 ERGs that Deloitte is telling us we have to have. We're not saying there's an easy button. We're not saying, hey, go out and organize this and everyone's going to come to your next meeting and it's going to be great. It's going to be, hey, what do we need? What does your company need right now? How can that reflect what you look like and what your community needs? And what are we going to do for that programming? And we've had some programs where it's like mental health programming, and we have 10 people, and then the next week we have the same mental health program, and there's 200 people. And so you just don't know what someone needs for that day. So we've tried to just continue virtual, in person, and really make it fit with people's days, because you never know when there's a school holiday for Atlanta and nobody can come to an event, or all of a sudden there's a snow day and people are home. And so we've really tried to think, what does that business resource group or employee resource group look like in 2022 versus 2019 when we were looking at it originally.
Whitney, do you guys have those as well, right?
We do. And just to add on to that, I think, so at Aaron's, we are fortunate enough to have 4 employee business resource groups and 2 additional employee business resource groups that are brewing right now. And so I think when I think back to the pandemic, they really held a different place for us. It was a sense of community. I think we had employees that felt very isolated, and they could go to this group of individuals that they identified with, that were a group of allies and individuals in a community, and kind of have this immediate kind of family. And one of the things we do at Aaron's is, we have Slack channels for everything. And these employee business resource groups have their own Slack channels. And just to see the camaraderie, the support that people have given to each other, I think some of that really got us through this pandemic time period where people were feeling so very isolated. So they're critical to our organization. And I think we leveraged them in the pandemic even more so than prior.
Okay. So do we have some time for some questions from the audience? Okay. So does anyone have a specific question? Oh, there we go. Okay. Do we?
Absolutely.
All right, let me, yeah, she is asking about the backup daycare days.
So I'm going to talk about a personal story, and then I'll talk about what we're doing at Delta. So when I first had my boys 12 years ago, I was working in consulting, and sometimes you'd work up for this big meeting, and something would happen and you couldn't go there, and it just felt like that moment, like you wanted to be there for that moment. So I worked with an organization at that time called TLC Sitters of Atlanta. Paid $200 a year, and the fee for it was outrageous, but it was like my peace of mind that if I had something big, I was going to be able to be there for it. Fast forward to what we've been doing at Delta is we've taken that concept and provided it for our employees at basically, almost free, right? Because a lot of our employees can't afford that. And if they have a flight they're flying because they're a flight attendant, or if they need to work, we've provided them with 15 days. So it's through care.com. They don't pay for this service, and they have access to 15 days of backup care a year at a very heavily subsidized rate. So they do pay something, but it's virtually nothing. And we're expanding that in 2023 to 25 days a year as needed, and looking into other options. And I don't want to take up too much time, but I want to say that I have Letitia Gallman. She runs all of our family care programs for Delta. So any detailed questions? Now. Okay. Care.com manages the program for us. So they can have a network of caregivers that they connect and provide.
And I can speak to what we do at Deloitte. We have a backup care as well, and it's through Bright Horizons. So y'all might be familiar with their programs. And you can go to the center, or you can have someone come to your home. And I know Cox has them as well because my neighbors had someone for a month, and that was awesome for us as well. But they have a lot of opportunities, and during the pandemic, we actually provided 30 days, and you could pay whoever because there was a shortage of caregivers. And so we had a neighbor that wasn't working because of the pandemic, and we were able, as a street, to basically keep her employed with backup care because we all needed it. And so she could come in for 2 days at my house and 2 days at the neighbors. So Bright Horizons is another opportunity for that.
In the US. And frankly, there are some communities, Hibbing, Minnesota is a random one, right? We don't have a lot, there's not a lot of availability of caregivers. So it's better in certain locations than others.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Okay, we have one.
No, that's a great question, and it's a big challenge, right? So I would tell you our participation rate is much higher at the store support center than it is in our Aaron stores that are spread across 47 states. But some of the things that we're doing there, specifically to make sure that our stores have the opportunity, we've done some regionalized events going to, a store, a place where we have a market, for example, in Phoenix. And Courtney Johnson, who's here with us from Aaron's, was part of that, and there may be others that are here too, that did a habitat build in Phoenix to take our Aaron's Women's Leadership Group to a community that we could serve. So that's happening. We do a lot of kind of virtual lunch and learn sessions. And so we obviously invite all of our store team members, and sometimes our store team members can't spend an hour doing that. So we record all those sessions, load it up to the internet site, give them the opportunity to join. And then we also partner with, some of our leaders that are regional managers and area directors who can kind of be out with our store team members and advocate, right? And talk to us about the ways to get them involved. And so that's been some of the newest work that we're doing in that space. But people get really excited. And we've spent a lot of time now saying, how do we incorporate our employee business resource groups into our talent acquisition message? We're fighting for talent like everybody else. And we think that's mission critical to provide people that opportunity. Yeah.
Thank you. I think, all right, we've got time for one more question.
Yes, so our family leave is a portion of your parental leave, but you can have it every year. So it's 16 weeks of family leave a year, and it's paid. And that's just whenever you need it, you get it once a year. So if you need to take care of a family member or a child that's sick, and then with your maternity leave, what you generally think of as maternity leave, you would get that plus your additional 8 weeks to be with your child just for giving birth. And so, paternity leave would be just your family leave, but your maternity leave would be a minimum of 24 weeks. So.
Okay. Well, we're going to have to call this part of the program to an end. But I want you to feel like, this is just the beginning of the conversation. We're opening this up, this dialogue. It's not always easy to have. But these folks are not, going to walk away from here and not be available to you through the March of Dimes, I'm sure you all have your business cards with you. But so this is just an opportunity. This was a great opportunity for us to start this dialogue. And I want to personally thank each and every one of you for your time up here, from away from your families, your work, your dogs, all those meetings. So if we could give them a big round of applause. This was just an example of 4 companies that are doing some amazing things to help promote parenting. But I also want to take an opportunity to recognize another company. And the March of Dimes would like to present a very special award to a company. We'd like to call Atlanta's 2022 MVPP, which is the most valuable partner in parenting. This year's MVPP award is presented to a company that has long demonstrated excellence in supporting their working parents. As one of our committee members noted, this company was supporting working parents before it was cool. They support their people in unique and holistic ways, and they aggressively seek to understand the needs of their working parents. The 2022 MVPP Award is presented to Accenture. So here to accept the award is Chantel Johnson. She's the head of Inclusion and Diversity Recruiting for Accenture North America. So it is a beautiful award. Yeah, I think we are.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much. I am honored to be here on behalf of Accenture. As Terry mentioned, my name is Chantel Johnson. I am the head of diversity recruiting for North America at Accenture. A little bit about me and my role. Some of my priorities in that particular role is really around debiasing our recruiting processes and our systems and creating equity in recruiting end-to-end for career opportunities at the firm. I'm also responsible for leading an amazing team of recruiters who are kind of out there in the marketplace, developing diverse candidate pipelines for career opportunities within the company. So some amazing work that our team does. I've been at Accenture for a total of 9 years. I'm what we call a boomerang. So I was there for 3 years. I left, I actually went over to Silicon Valley. So onto the West Coast, did some startup work and wanted to get back closer to family. So came back. I've been back for about 6 years. All of my experiences have been in recruiting. I'm a recruiting lifer. I love, love, love the art and science of connecting talent to opportunity, especially underrepresented talent and talent who wouldn't have access to well-paying jobs and great companies like Accenture. So I've made a career out of that. But I just wanted to kind of say Accenture, well, for those of you that don't know Accenture, we are a global management consulting firm. Thank you. We're a global management consulting firm. We employ about 700,000 people globally. We're on the road to 1 million people. That's just mind-boggling to me. That's about 70,000 in North America. And we've always been rooted in talent. You think about kind of our value proposition, right? And kind of what we do. We don't sell a product. Our asset is our people. We sell the brilliant minds and creativity and innovation of our people. So it's always been rooted in talent, having the best talent, growing the best talent, and keeping the best talent. So a lot of our programs and a lot of our benefits are rooted in how are we taking care of our people. But I do think COVID, as many of us talked about, the pandemic really brought a unique challenge to all companies, including ours. And I was just so proud to see how we all stepped up to the plate and really listened to our people. What is it that they needed? How can we support? And really thinking about supporting the whole person, not just the person who comes to work every day, but the well-being of the whole person, including mental health. And I think that's when the mental health topic really kind of came to a peak. And you started seeing companies really trying to think about what are the things that we can do to help in that regard. So in the interest of time, I just wanted to share 3 key things that I think Accenture does fantastic to support our people, our working parents, our working moms. As a mom of a 3-year-old who actually just started school a few weeks ago for the first time, a lot of newness in my household and a lot of challenges with that. So just wanted to share about 3 things that we do. And these are things that I think that companies can scale across their organization. These aren't things that, you have to have a lot of resources, a lot of money, a lot of people. It's really just rooted in culture, right? So one is listening, leading with a listening ear. And Accenture does a really good job of that. We connect with our people in very small environments and forums to hear from them. What are you facing? What do you need from us? And really acting upon those things. If folks don't feel comfortable speaking up, we also lead with surveys and send out surveys to capture that data in that way. So I think that's one thing. 2, investing in programs that are inclusive. So thinking about what are we hearing from our people and what are the programs that we need to put in place to support them. One key program that I am so proud to be a part of is our returnship program. It's all around bringing moms back into the workforce. We heard moms were having to leave the workforce in droves. And I have a stat here. I think it was 863,000 women dropped out of the workforce in September 2020, and 168,000 men dropped out. So with the disruption of school, after school programs, elderly parents, women were disrupted and they were forced to leave the workforce at a disproportionate rate. This program is saying, moms, we want you back and we know you want to come back and we're going to give you the support. We're going to give you the training. We're going to make sure that you're successful. And we've partnered with an organization called the Mom Project to help us with this initiative. And I'm proud to say that we've hired 125 moms this year across cities, across regions. And next year we have a goal of hiring about 200 to 250 more moms into great, amazing technical jobs at Accenture, again, across cities and regions. So I'm so proud to be, a part of that program and scaling that program for future years. Third thing, and I'm wrapping up. The third thing I want to implore upon all of you as kind of HR professionals is adopting a culture of flexibility. I think all of us, working from home and being remote for the last couple of years, we can work remote, as a lifestyle. I think we've shown that if we put the right processes, the right systems, the right tools and framework around our people, they can be successful. And I think, our employees are asking us for this flexibility more now than ever before. You think about the Gen Zers, right? They want their time back, and it's not, less of being productive. It's just more of, I want to be productive in an individualized way. So I think supporting your workforce in that flexibility is absolutely critical to, one, productivity, and two, retaining your best talent. So those are the three things. And again, I didn't want to get very specific on what Accenture does. I understand we're a large company. We have a lot of resources. I realize a lot of other companies don't. But I think these three key things are rooted in culture. And as you think about, us as HR professionals being culture makers and culture influencers within our organization, these are things that we can all adopt in our own roles. So again, thank you so much for the honor. I look forward to taking this back home to Accenture, and thank you for the time.
Wow, what an event. What a day. Front of a packed room. Great to see everyone. Thanks for making it out. I'm Brendan Enoch, the Vice President in Finance and Corporate Controller at Carter's. I'm a working dad. My wife is here. She's a working mom. She's here supporting this great cause and supporting me. We have two young boys, and she's been employed with Cortland since before having those two kids. And we just want to thank both our companies for supporting us, because it makes us better professionals. It makes us better people, better families. And this event just really encapsulates all of that. So want to give, I'm also a proud member of the March of Dimes board for the Georgia market. And want to thank Rose Horton today, as well as Terry Button Guthrie, panelists, the speakers. It was just an outstanding event. They gave us a lot of food for thought. We want to thank you for the time. We want to thank you for the insights. We heard from a lot of great companies, and it gave us a lot to think about. As we wrap up, also want to send a huge thanks to the corporate sponsors that we had, because they really helped us put this event together. Northside Hospital, big thank you. We have Aaron's, King and Spalding, Cox Enterprises, PwC. Again, none of this really could have happened without it. So big round of applause for everyone. As we wrap up today, I do want to take a second and have a little call for action. If you look at your tables, you'll see some cards there. In March of Dimes, we'd love to stay in touch with all of you. We want this engagement to continue. This is what you heard. This is just the beginning. We want these conversations to continue. And we want to hear back from you all. And so there's a section on the card that basically asks for that input back. Where do you want to be engaged? There's opportunities from a corporate perspective. There's opportunities from the personal perspective. And we want to hear from you. So please take a second and make sure you fill out that card. So there's opportunities like this, corporate, the executive leadership opportunities for events like today, other corporate sponsorship opportunities as well. We really look forward to seeing you at more events and making sure that we continue to stay in touch and build a stronger partnership together. We're also establishing a young professionals board. And so please keep that in mind. These could be great opportunities for others at your company to continue on. We'd also like to consider if you'd be willing to donate today. On that card, there's a QR code, makes it very easy. And we'll go through what some of those donations we'll be able to deliver for the March of Dimes organization. With a donation of $100, which you'll see up on the screen here, can provide essential baby items, such as a stroller or a pack and play, for women who've completed one of the prenatal education programs with March of Dimes. With a donation of $500, we'll be able to support 5 families with education and resources through the NICU Family Support Program. And with a donation of $1,000, we provide access for 10 moms-to-be to our supportive pregnancy care programs, where they receive prenatal care, support, and education throughout their pregnancy. As you complete your card, please raise your hand after you make your donation, and a March of Dimes staff will be around with one of these purple leis. So I'm going to pause here for a minute to give everyone a chance to complete the card. Again, the donation amounts listed are just suggestions. We'd love every little bit of donation goes a long way. And so we thank you in advance.